To keep one step ahead in warfare, you need to develop new weapons. And that's exactly what they did in a remote part of Cumbria during the height of the Cold War. With film never seen before on British television, Peter Snow reveals the top-secret missile programme, Blue Streak.
There wasn't anyone, I think, who knew what was going on up here at all. You weren't supposed to talk about it.
Security was intense.
People had to be vetted before they were employed here, and if you didn't pass the vetting, you didn't get a job.
One day, the security men arrived on site, came into the control room, removed this man. He had been involved in naughties, I think, in Australia with the communists.
In the late 1950s, this remote part of Cumbria held a fascinating secret. It was home to a highly classified project that will give Britain a new breed of nuclear weapons. The site was chosen to test and develop a land-based missile, codenamed Blue Streak. Here it is, the only Blue Streak rocket left here at Spadeadam. 20 meters long, liquid oxygen tank there, kerosene tank here, mix the two together, and the explosive rocket mix that makes puts hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of thrust into the engines which were stuck on the back right here.
Well, this is the ruin of what used to be the control room for the engine test area, and in here is the entrance to the room itself. It had to be this sort of protection.
So you came in here for protection when you fired the rocket motors?
That's right. Everyone from the engine test area had to either leave the site or come here into this room.
Yes. And when you actually tested the missile, what was it like then?
Well, the atmosphere then was exciting. I saw the best part of 1,000 tests from this control room. And number 1,000 was every bit as exciting as number 1.
The development of the weapon was part of Britain's response to the standoff with Russia in the Cold War. And the workers in Cumbria played a key role in the secret project testing the engines on site.
There was once that a friend and I sneaked out of the control room. Very naughty we were, and we laid in a little hill just at the back, and we had the engine firing. It was the shock of our lives. It was the shock of our lives. We never realised that the pressures were so intense. It was very exciting. We only did it once.
You could feel the vibration through your feet. It comes straight up, and it was like, oh, you can't really describe the feeling. It was such... I tremble every time I think about it because it was so awesome.
Then, suddenly, with work progressing well, in 1960 the Conservative government cancelled Blue Streak without a word of warning. It wasn't just that it was costing a lot, it was deeper than that. Unlike a submarine-based missile or a bomber in the air, Blue Streak stuck on land would have been a sitting target. And if there had been an attack on Britain, getting the rocket off in a nuclear retaliation against Russia would have been virtually impossible.
Just imagine that we had a 4-minute warning of a real attack. We had 4 minutes in which to prepare the rocket, which needed in fact 30 minutes as a preparation time to launch. 4 minutes and 30 minutes don't match.
Blue Streak was now in limbo, and jobs went to Spadeadam as the rocket's future was discussed.
You wondered what was going to happen because a lot of people were made what you would call redundant now. There was a certain number kept on, and for a whole year we did nothing. We sat around and played cards and just read books and knitted and did all sorts of things. That was the females, of course. But it was quite a long time for a year just to sit and not do much.
Then someone had a bright idea. With all those millions of pounds spent on Blue Streak, why not use the rocket to launch the latest technology, satellites, into space? It was no longer a state secret, and Britain now joined other countries developing the rocket, and in 1964 Blue Streak swapped the wilds of Cumbria for the outback of Australia for its first test flight. This footage has never been seen on television before.
You watch it and the jaws open and it sits there just for a split second, and then it lifts itself up and it's away. And it brings tears to your eyes. I tremble every time I think about it. And I trembled more when I was watching it, because I knew I had a part in it. Only a small part, I know, but it was part of me that went up. And I could tremble now. It's brilliant.
Blue Streak worked perfectly every time it was launched. But other sections of the rocket made by Germany and France were not as reliable, and it soon became a target for the press.
If you don't get the top 2 stages to fire, you don't get anything into orbit. So although the base stage Blue Streak worked every time...
That was the British bit.
Yeah, the French bit, for example, wasn't always reliable. And when the French got theirs reliable, the Germans started to fail.
With the project costing the taxpayer millions of pounds, in 1968 the Labour government pulled the plug. The Minister for Technology announced that Blue Streak would be scrapped. Cumbria would no longer be at the cutting edge of Britain's space effort.
The question is, didn't we pour millions and millions and millions into what was in effect a defence technology because of the Cold War and pretend it would be profitable? I don't really think that was the case.
We were in the control room, setting up for firings as usual, very, very busy, and we heard the news and just couldn't believe it. We were all very, very sad, and it just destroyed a lot of people. We made a lot of friends. We were very, very close.
All of us were absolutely gutted at the idea that this was going to come to an end when it was so close to fruition. Virtually ticking over expenses were all that the government saved by cancelling the project.
We were very upset about it. We felt as if we'd been sold down the road for nothing. There was definitely a missed opportunity here for the British, and it was all given away and just came to nothing at the end, so they haven't sort of gained anything at all by not going ahead with it.
Remember, at that time, there weren't satellites orbiting the Earth. These things were very much still in the future. And Tony Benn, in his wisdom, and I call it wisdom advisedly, cancelled the project and actually abandoned the whole hope of sunning Blue Streak as a launcher. And the American rockets, which are similar to Blue Streak, are still being used to this day to launch satellites.
Once you weren't using the Blue Streak for military purposes, it was very questionable whether it was a sensible thing to maintain simply to provide an alternative launcher to the Americans. We had a lot of other demands we had to meet of maintaining our manufacturing industry and so on. And I think, looking back on, we're better not to have started it on that basis, but that wasn't a decision taken by the Labour government.
We'll never know, but if the technological adventure that began here had been allowed to run its course, it might have been Britain's Blue Streak rather than France's Ariane that would have launched missiles into space. Rightly or wrongly, by allowing this piece of Cumbrian moorland to return to the wild, Britain counted itself out of being in the forefront of the European space race.
And you can discover more about the Blue Streak project in a special exhibition at Carlisle's Tully House Museum, and that starts in October.